Hello there, ladies, gentlemen, and unicorns. I welcome you to this code review of my Ludum Dare 43 entry, The Sacrificial Trail. If you're here just for the postmortems, well, bye for now. For anyone else, yes, this is going to be a code review of my game in Twine, which are made with the Sugarcube 2 format. It helps if you have played the game or at least watched a video of how it's being played, which you can over somewhere. There will be a card over at my other channel, Fill Motion Video, where I put up a playthrough of the game. With that being said, let's dive right into Twine and see just what this all is about. So once we fire up Twine, this is how it looks like on my system. I still got the Power MT game in here. It was just to paste and especially copy code around to the new game. The Sacrificial Trail, this purple one here, is what you get from my jam version, and this is the post-jam version, so you can see things look a little bit different here. Those are all nodes or passages, by the way. If you want to just import it as well on your own Twine system, you can just download my source. It's an HTML file, and you just drag and drop it here, or you can say import from file over here. But yeah, Twine, it's pretty easy, and once you click it, it opens up like this. So you've probably seen me playing the game or tried it yourself, and you've realized that it's very procedural in a way that there's always a repeating game loop, and there are just some outliers. So from the structural side, let's have a look here. This green rocket here means this is where the game starts. So it's the title, and then we have here the intro. And once the intro is over, we get into this loop of you prepare for the next stage, select where you want to go, the stage itself, the stage ending, where it just tallies up how much fatigue you accumulated and stuff. Then the stop, and if the stop has a shop, there is the shop. Then we have this progression manager here, so all those arrows lead to this one here. Because each passage gets executed one after the other, it's hard to have some kind of control objects. So this is why each passage links back to this progression. We will look at this in detail, how this one works in the jam version. But just for now, this one controls how each stage or what next passage is being called. Then, of course, we have incidents. Incidents mean either the unicorn visiting or different kinds of game overs. You ran out of gas, you were overly fatigued, or you were out of time. Then we have this game over screen here that loops back to the end, where you can try again. Or if you manage to finish the game, then progression bumps you right over here to victory, and you just have these little 3 victory screens here, and in the end, you get the different ending depending on how much you sacrifice to the unicorn. So what are those things here over here? Well, those are widgets and stuff for initialization. What a widget is in terms of Sugarcube 2, I will get to in a bit. So this is where all the initialization happens, and once this is done, the game starts. So to make a new passage or to edit something in Twine, you just click passage, and here a new passage appears. Right now we can delete this one, of course. So we won't start at the title, but actually at the StoryInit, because if you have a passage that's called StoryInit, like this, with this kind of capitalization, it means Sugarcube 2 will execute this before anything else. So this gets executed before anything here in the title gets executed. So because it's a little bit tedious to keep reading this code here, let's copy it all over to Notepad++. Because here in Notepad I made a user-defined language, so just that we get some context highlighting. It's not perfect, but I think it should do fine just for our purposes, because this is nicer to look at than this. So if you're familiar with Java, this doesn't look too strange to you. It's just setting up a bunch of variables. I can set here my resources. Now this is a plain old Java object. So just to show you, to call this, I just go resources and coffee, something like this. So it's very simple. It's just a matter for me to group stuff so that the resources are coffee, gas, and money. So those are the initial values. Then the items, coffee, yield, min, and max, so that I can just tweak how much coffee or how much fatigue one coffee cures. Just have it all here in one place, which is always good. The pace is just an enumeration for slow, steady, and fast. Yeah, this one here, why is this gray? This is actually text that's being rendered like, just plain p tag in HTML. But since this this will get run, but it won't get shown, it's just for me when I'm debugging and just things go wrong, that I know at least in what group I am. So it just prints out player. Okay, of course, we set up the player with health, sanity, fatigue, and the threshold. So just for tweaking purposes, I kept adding and subtracting to this number, but 100 seemed fine. So if you go over 100 fatigue, you die, and the initial pace is steady. Yeah, of course, we have points. I don't think that I'm counting points, but I set them up anyway, and the consumption, the gas per kilometer, and the fatigue per minute. So those are just values that I pulled out of my bottom, just to have a baseline for how the consumption and the fatigue buildup works. We will get to this when we get to the actual stage. So of course we have here the stats for the game, how many stops you visited, how many kilometers you traveled, and this also, those stats set up here how much how long or the distance you have to cover here initially. So it's a random value between 200 250 kilometers, and you got between 160 and 180 minutes, and there also is a value for unicorn incidents. So how many times we want the unicorn to visit us. So it's a random number between 2 and 4. So it's not too often, but also not too rarely. But from what I've heard, some players encountered unicorn maybe just once, or even not at all. So there must be some kind of bug later. Then of course we set the stats kilometers to go to the kilometers initial, which is very straightforward, and the minutes to go. Like you can see here, I put up a random number, but I'm overriding it here now with the kilometers, initial kilometers, times 0.76. Why? Well, why not? I just moved this up and down again, and arrived at this sweet spot there that it's not too hard to make, but also you really have to be a little bit conscious of your time. Good. Okay, now the handover variables. Yes, like I said here, when we get back here, I don't have a controller object or anything. So I used this progression passage over here. And just that I can pass data between objects, I need to write them to a variable, which gets there probably set in progression, and then another passage reads this variable here. It's a little bit unusual, like I said, because you can't have a controller object that you can access all the time. That's holding all your values that you need, or just writing value in another passage or anything like that. So it's a little bit like, this is a bit far-fetched, but it's a little bit like assembly programming, where you just designate some memory and you say, I'll always read this variable, and this will be the last button that was pressed. So the last button in this case was N for no. Yeah, I know this is not very, very well, because I'm here using a literal string. Anyway, the last time was 0, and the return passage. Also, this is a string. You can pass strings which have here the title of the passage you want to link to. So this is not very waterproof, but still it works most of the time. Okay, then we have here the current ending, which is set to 0, and the game to incident, none, and game over false. So this game variable we will encounter here in the progression passage again. So what is up with this one here? Make roads and make shops. By the way, those cache audio, those are still leftovers from PowerMT. So and they're not even properly escaped. Look at this. This shouldn't be an ampersand. This should be a percentage sign, like so. So you can just delete this, and it doesn't matter, because like I said, leftovers from PowerMT. So what are those here? Make roads, make shops. Well, those are calls to widgets, and this is why we used widgets. Let's have a look at make roads first. Again, I'm going to copy this over and paste it here. Just to make sure here, you can specify certain tags in Twine, which is quite helpful. If you say tag forest, you can check against the tag. So you can always, for example, say, yes, you are in the forest. But you can also use this for some defined values as in Sugarcube 2. By the way, I have here the Sugarcube 2 documentation open. So everything that's related to this you can find in here. But yeah, just take my word for it. Widget is a defined keyword and no BR, no break, because this one I have, I think, in all the passages, because this means I need to specify line breaks and such manually, which is good because especially when you're just in code and having control sequences, all those line breaks translate over well to to the final rendered HTML. So you get a lot of white space there if you're just doing some calculations there in the code. So I always say no breaks and do my breaks manually. And of course, widget means, yes, this is a widget. And you can see that this is a widget by having here the name. No, this is not correct. This should be widget make roads. Yeah, this is more like it. I think I just toyed around with it before. You open here a widget and you close it here. Yeah, it's much like HTML. So you use those pointy brackets twice, so otherwise it would be interpreted as an HTML tag, just to be on the safe side that I mentioned this. And yeah, so the first thing we do when we are initializing the story, we make the roads and we make the shops. So we make the roads by setting road attributes to that each road has different conditions. Again, this is hard-coded, which I'm not much a fan of, but if you keep things tidy, largely it should be all right. Let's make this a little bit wider here so that our lines don't wrap over. And the roads can have different kinds of inclination. So those are just enumerations for these attributions. Just to be on the safe side, because I was trying that I didn't have to spell out good, fair, and bad and terrible each time. And once I make a typo like this, then it would still work, but produce some kind of strange bug later on. So this is why I did this. Then we set the number of roads to 30. Why 30 roads? Well, this passage actually creates an array of, or a structure in a sense, of 30 roads. And the game, once you're here and to pick one or two, one of the 3 roads in the game, it just takes 3 random roads out of this array here and presents them to you. And in the first run of the game, I had a problem that the game would be running out of roads if you traveled long enough, and there wouldn't be any roads left. So I think 30 is not that good. I think it is sufficient. Let's change this to 50, just to be on the sure side, on the safe side. Setting the first object in the array manually, so JS knows what object type to expect. Yes, this is a workaround, like it says here in the comment. I'm creating here now a new structure or a new object that's game roads. And the first one has a condition, an inclination, the length. Like this comment says, just to know what kinds of objects and variables there will be. So this was the first road. Each road has a condition, inclination, the length, and this is how this gets executed or assigned. Then we loop through the number of roads, which is very straightforward. And for each road, then we set the condition, the inclination, and the length, and add this to the array that is game roads. And we say push unique. I don't think this is necessary because the chances that there are 2 exact same roads showing up is not that high. But of course, still it could happen, and it doesn't cost a lot of processing power since we're running this in the browser anyway, so who cares? So this was creating the roads, and also we have different shops, and this is pretty much the same as roads. We have here for each shop a couple of attributes, the name of the shop, clam, speedo, tank shop, yeah, whatever just came to my mind. We got coffee price, the coffee stock, gas stock, and gas price. As you can see here, there's something that's not really well escaped here. Random, no, must be something there in the markup. In the code highlighting markup, I mean. Anyway, so we got some attributes here, and we got the max number of shops 20. This should be enough. And like before, we define the first object there in the array manually so that we know the number there of properties. And then we loop through and push it to the game shops object as unique. And this is all that happens there in the story init until we are here. We got also an inventory that's being displayed and a status. Let's have a look at those real quickly. And the inventory is just, since I'm having a lot of problems there with rounding and especially a floating point display, I'm always making sure to round my numbers down to decimal places. And this is what happens here. So the resource is money. Sometimes you would have 99.99999976325 or something. So I always, multiply it by 100. Round it to the nearest integer and then divide it by 100 so that, I get 2 decimal places, because you can't really specify a number of decimal places you want to round to. And some things I want to round to the nearest integer, of course, because you can't have fractions of coffee. I mean, you probably can, but not in my game. And this one here looks familiar. This is plain old HTML. So I'm just assigning here a class because I can also have CSS style sheets for my whole story. And I do. And it just says, it just prints out here the resources I have in money, coffee, and gas. And this is the widget. So I think this is how widgets usually work. You just call this inventory here when you're in your story by saying inventory, if you spell it correctly, of course, and then it prints this whole thing. It executes this block of code. So it's like a function in a sense. And also with the status here, also copy and paste it here. The status is just it's the player fatigue. Also have here sanity and health, which I didn't use, but it's commented out. So who knows, maybe I will use it later. So finally, with the game being set up, let's start with the title screen. So the title screen is very small. What happens here is just the UI bar gets styled. The UI bar in terms of Sugarcube 2 is, let me show you real quick. Here in the game, the UI bar is this thing here, and style means that I just minimize it. So nothing very interesting there, but you do this via script. And by the way, those backslashes here means that there is no line break, because I didn't specify here a no break. I think this was also left over from my PowerMT game. So of course, master audio stop. We don't have any audio, but if there would be playing any kind of sound, it would stop. Of course, if we're restarting the game, we just want to start at a blank slate. Then we specify here an image, which is hard-coded. Exclamation mark means that it's like an H1 tag, like so, that it's rendered big. The version, and between those brackets there, we can specify links. It's like a little bit like Wikipedia code. You specify here what's being displayed and the name of the passage that this should link to. So the passage is start. So let's make this a bit smaller. Once we click here, we are here in this passage. And if we compare it now to how it looks here in HTML, it's very self-explanatory. Okay, all those keywords are still getting highlighted here, but this passage here doesn't have a lot of programming. It's just take it already. It's resources, money, euros we collected for you. This equals sign here is the same thing as writing print. It's a little bit like in good old Commodore Basic, you didn't have to write out print each time, you just could make this question mark here. And we say put it in your pocket, which links to look at the person. Why did I do this? Okay, it's look at the person, probably because this is how it works in Twine. When you make a new passage and you say you link to next, let's call it just next, it automatically creates a new passage for you that is titled like you put there in the link. So it's very fast in terms of authoring when you just want to plow through writing a story. So we will start, look at the person. Again, nothing interesting here. And the intro, I think here is where it gets interesting. You still got minutes left and your goal is kilometers north. Button, don't look back, and progression. Like you see here, it puts us it links us to progression, which is this unwieldy thing here. So it doesn't get straight to map, but to progression. And like I said, this is for control flow purposes. And button here means, well, of course, that it makes a button. Like this here is a straight good old link, and the next one here, This one here is a button. I can define the look of the buttons, of course, in the game's CSS. If you just click here your game's name, you can say edit style sheet. Where is it? Edit story style sheet, and here we go. In this case, there's not much going on there. Why isn't there much going on? Probably because this is the very first gem version, and this one here, the one in the browser that I just showed you, already has some kind of markup. I think the very first version there, version 1.0 didn't have this kind of, yeah, those were still the good old blue links and buttons. So yeah, but you can, like you just saw, you can stick it there in the style sheet. Okay, now look at this unwieldy progression thing here. What happens here? It's 50 lines long. It's not that terrible. But yeah, like the comment says, this strings together individual parts to create a playthrough. So the first thing we do here, so after each part, like you can see here, we go straight back to progression and see what happens. So if game.gameOver equals true, you can use equal for equals, or GT for greater than, or GTE greater than or equal, or something like this. I don't think it's mandatory, like here, not equal. You can also use the good Java comparators. I don't know how to pronounce them. I always read the term, never speak it out loud. But yeah, you can use both here. But I wasn't sure that the Java things would work, so I used what Sugarcube told me to use. Again, this is here in the good old Sugarcube documentation. Okay, so if the game is over, well, then we go to game over. Very straightforward. So switch previous. Previous here means this is again a keyword or a function in a sense that's specified by Sugarcube. This value, of course, holds the name here of the previous passage that we've visited. And yeah, I'm just switching on what was there. So if we came from the intro, well, then let's go to the map. This is how control flow works here. So if case is prepare, I don't know why I'm using is here. Frankly, I don't think this is necessary, but I think this is a logical comparator in a sense. Yeah, I'm not sure. So, but if we come from prepare, well, we want to go to map. You can see here, prepare, we want to go to map. Once we're leaving map, we're asking progression where to go. It puts us into stage and so on. This is all that happens here. So if there is a game incident and the variable game incident doesn't equal an empty string, well, there must be an incident. We go to game incident. So this incident here will happen, will take over from there, and it won't execute the rest of this passage here. I think I'm not quite sure right now. Anyway, so yeah, if there is an incident, we go to incident. If the kilometers is less or equal than 0, well, go to victory because we've made it. And if nothing here in this stage end happened, or if none of those if conditions applied, like there was no incident and we still got some distance to cover, well, we go to stop. And if we came from stop, well, we set the incident to an empty string. Otherwise, what happened to me was that incidents from stages before would still fire because, yeah, this again, you always have to do this manually to really make sure that you clean up all the mess you create. So those two lines here just clear the return passage and the incident. So last button, if last button equals Y for yes, then we go to the shop, or else we go to prepare. We will see why this is interesting, but I think this is what happens here at the stop. When it asks you, will you go to the shop? It says button yes, and once we click yes, it sets the variable of last button to Y, a literal Y string. Again, this is not too well for passing variables, but this was the only way that I knew that I could make workable. I don't think there's even a better way to do this in Sugarcube, but I think there must be a pattern for this. So, and if we come from shop, once we leave the shop, we go to prepare. So like it's like I said, this is very straightforward. It just bounces between the progression. So when we first start the game here, don't look back, we get bumped here straight to the map screen, like it is specified here. So let's have a look at the map screen itself. which consists mostly of making the HTML look pretty. I can just keep it here open for reference. Okay, so the map, you still have kilometers to go and so many minutes left. Change your pace if necessary. So we get here a group with the radio buttons. Like I said in my playthrough, I'm not really happy with the radio buttons. They're pretty small. They look like bullets, and the text also doesn't look like you could click it. I think here in the first version of the game, it wasn't even you couldn't even click the link text. Oh yes, you could, but it didn't look like you could, because as you can see here, the mouse cursor didn't change here like into this little pointy finger like on those other links. So this wasn't very straightforward there. In this version, I changed at least the color because anything that's interactable is red here, but still, yeah, not too happy with how this turned out. So if I keep working on this, I might change it to something, more straightforward. Okay, so now is the interesting part that happens here. We pluck from the array of game roads 3 different roads. And this is why I wanted to make sure that there are only unique roads being pushed onto this array, so that I make sure that, you don't have 3 roads or at least 2 roads that are exactly the same. Good, so this is what this pluck thing here does. Again, we can refer to the Sugarcube 2 documentation for this kind of function. So it just plucks one, which means it picks one randomly and removes it from the array. So if road length is greater than kilometers to go, we set, if this is also quite ham-fisted, but it works. So of course each road has a certain length, but if the kilometers we still need to go doesn't equal this length, because the road is longer than the place we need to go, the distance we still need to cover, well then we go straight in, and in the road we change the kilometers to go, to the kilometers to go. Good, next up is just making this cute little table here. This is a table in HTML, and we just print the variables. So I'm not sure why this minus here. I think it is the same. It is the same thing as the equals sign. It just prints out the variable there of the road. So we're using now here with the underscore just local variables. So I can set road A here, and I'm doing this because I can just copy and paste this block and only have to change here the road, and of course the road here to the link of the next road. So what does this link here mean? Again, this is for Sugarcube. You link to you display a certain string, like so. You display road C. Then you link to progression. But to know which button we've clicked or which link we've clicked, I'm going to set the variable of stage to road C. So because once we get back there into progression, let's copy paste it there, we're going to switch on the stage, I think. No. Yeah, case stage, of course. Yeah, we're not going to switch on the stage. We just go to stage end, and there in stage end, it will, oh my god. Oh damn it, this was not good. I just pasted here something and I can't undo it. Can I undo it? No, damn it. I think I just messed something up. Crap. Okay, good, we're back. I just re-imported the story again, because the problem was once you hit, you overwrite something here. I don't know why the undo key isn't working in Twine, which is very annoying, especially if you paste a whole paragraph or a whole passage from a different story where it shouldn't belong. So, okay, good. Let's get back to what we had before. I was just talking about this variable here that gets set. The stage won't be used by progression, but then here in the stage, I think there we will use this variable. So stage will hold the reference to the road that we picked. This is all we need to know. Good, so now we are here in stage. This is where a lot of stuff happens in the game. If we just pick a road, it's this passage here. It just says travel and then prints out what happened and maybe a continue button or not. So this is the longest passage by far, as you can see it. So travel, it just says you're going at a pace. It just lists what all the options you picked. I had here inventory and status. I apparently commented it out so that it doesn't get cluttered there on the screen, because you don't need to know how much you still got in your inventory, because you can't do anything about it anyway. This is one thing that's important for me, is to only present the players with the information they need to know for making a decision. Well, of course, you don't want to keep it from them when they want to know it for something else, but usually just present the player what they need for decisions, and nothing more, but also nothing less. Good. Those are again temporary variables, which because they have the underscore here. So the gas multi is set to 1.0, the fatigue multi to 1.0, and the speed multi 1.0. Speed multi defines slowness, so the bigger the multi, the slower the speed. This is good that I commented this here, because otherwise you would think, like with the others, the bigger it gets, the better it is. Okay, so multi means, of course, multiplication, and this is how we evaluate what's being calculated. So if first we take the road condition. So if the road is in good condition, which we take from stage, like we had here before in the map. So the stage variable just again holds the current road. So we look at the condition of the road, and if it is good, well, we multiply the gas multi by times 0.8. So if the road is good, you use up a little bit less gas, you don't fatigue as much, and like this here, the multi defines slowness. So if this value gets smaller, you're actually traveling at a faster speed. Just really to hammer this home. And yeah, I guess same is here with the fare. Like this is the vanilla option, so multiplied by times 1. Of course, the multi doesn't change. But if the road is bad, well, you use up more gas and you fatigue more easily. Or if the road is terrible, you use up even more gas, almost twice as much. You fatigue very easily. And of course, you go 2.5 times slower. And yeah, this is just what happens here. Also with the inclination. You can see here all those values that I have here. Yeah, just toyed around with them until they felt right. And this is actually the fun part of the game, is for the player just to developing a feeling for how those variables are connected when choosing or picking a road. Okay, yes, same thing with the inclination. If it's a steep decline, wow, you save half the gas. You don't fatigue that easily. And of course, you even go faster. And if it's a steep incline, wow, you really burn through your gasoline. And also it's very tiring, and of course, you're 2.8 times slower. So again, the game is picking the roads that are in best condition, that are declines, and about the pace you're going. Of course, the slower you go, of course, you get the speed multi is slower, but of course, you use up less gasoline and you don't fatigue as much as going faster. But fat multi. Okay, it's fatigue. You know what? Look at this. Look at this. Fat multi. Of course, so fatigue doesn't factor in at all, because this should be fatigue multi. I don't think that I fixed this even in the current version. So there another bug developed or uncovered by just talking and explaining your code. Great. Okay, so the default pace is 100 kilometers per hour, so 0.6 minutes per kilometer. Okay, so this is the calculation of how long it takes us. So the gas base, we're going to set it to the stage length times the consumption of gas per kilometers. And of course, the minutes it takes us and the gas it takes us. So everything now here gets multiplied by the multiplier, of course, because those different conditions all just added up. And here in the end, so we get the fatigue is now the fatigue base times the fatigue multi. So it was fat multi didn't work here. And of course, again, we round it down to the nearest 2 decimal places. And fatigue can be rounded, that's okay. So we're not being too thorough or too unforgiving there at the fatigue. So timed, this is another great keyword there of Sugarcube, which means, as you've seen it before here when I was there in the stage, let's try it here, that the things just fade in after 1 second and this button here after 2 seconds, because I wanted to give it some kind of anticipation, or let's say gravitas even, that you don't know if the button says continue or not, because if not, it's game over. So I want the player with the meager means that were at my disposal. I want to keep the player at their toes despite them playing just a text-based game. So after 1 second, this is the transition name, which means T8N is just, this fade in. I have here a commented block that was, I think, used via class was debug for debugging. And just tallies up how long the section took you, how much you spent. And after this, the everything here gets added to the current variables. So those were just, like I said, temporal variables, and they now get incorporated into the other ones. So of course, the gasoline is minus the gasoline you used up in the stage. Your fatigue is plus the fatigue you build up during the stage. And the last time, this is expected by stage end. Again, this is one of those variables that are just handover variables, is how long this stage took you, because stage end will also need to know how long this was, and then I don't have a way to access this temporal variable. Temporary, not temporal. So of course I'm going to set the minutes for all the stats, and we're checking if anything along the way ran out. So if the gas is less than 0, well, then we set the gas to 0. And now the incidents that could happen. So we're going to set the next passage, this local variable there, for next passage to progression. So right from the start, once this passage there of stage is over, it should go to progression, unless anything happens in between here. So first, let's check if the unicorn incidence is still greater than 0. Or the stop, we're currently at stop number 3, which means we've gone through this 3 times. So if this is the case, then we pick a random number between 0 and 4. And if it is 0, which means less than 1, then we say the next passage is the unicorn passage. We set the game's incident, also a handover variable, to unicorn, and the return passage to stage end. So once we have here an incident, and in unicorn it will return to wherever this came from, and this is the reason for having this return passage. So as you can see it here, if we haven't had a unicorn appear at stop number 3, we're running the dice there, because I want to make sure that the chance is a little bit higher in the beginning. After 3 stops, you should most of the time encounter a unicorn. Of course, as I can see it now here with my post-jam eyes, it's not bulletproof. Like I said, it's still a roll of the dice, and the chance is 1, 2, 3 or 1 in 4. So it's not that helpful. By the way, those things here is the reason why it takes 1.5 seconds for this continue button to appear, because it is not possible to wait within an if condition, because then Sugarcube will complain, we're waiting, but the if condition didn't close properly, and so on. So this is why those notifications there that you ran out of something, actually they show up but are invisible, but it still takes them, each of them, half a second to show up. This is the reason why the continue button takes this long. So if the minutes to go was less than 0, well, we ran out of time. The next passage is incident out of time. So we're going to display this one here. No, there it is, out of time. And so on and so forth for all the incidents. And finally, we have the next button, and we go to, when we click continue, to the next passage. As you can see, whatever this means now. If none of those, if conditions applied, well, of course, we go to progression, and we are here. Once progression says we came from the stage, we go to the stage end, and this is this arrival here. So let's have a look at stage end. This is again very short. So we covered a number of kilometers. It's just displaying variables. And as you can see here, I made a new div block for inventory and status. And this is what happens here. This is just a printout of the widgets that we have here for inventory and status. Very, very straightforward. So it's just informing you what happened. And the next one again is progression, and progression will bump us to stop. Let's have a look at stop then. So the rest is again, continue there. That we just make a stop along the way. And will I buy something? Yes or no. And this is again what happens here. I'm just setting this last button here to Y or N, and progression will then look at what's happening here. And this is this case here in the switch. Let's also have it highlighted correctly. So if we said the last button was yes, then we go to the shop. If not, that means we said we don't want to visit the shop. We said no, and we go straight back to prepare. But what if we visit the shop? This is pretty interesting, I think. Now let's go here. Oh, now we have a unicorn already, a unicorn incident. Okay, I'm just continuing here. Will you buy something? Yes. That we have here this shop display for reference open. So again, the shop is more HTML tables to have this displayed here in a sense that doesn't look too ugly. But inventory, it tells you what you have, so you can make a decision on what to buy or not to buy. And of course the coffee, and here we have the current shop. Again, it picks here from the current shop. As you can see here, the shop name is the current shop. Where does this happen that we have a current shop? Let me investigate, because I'm a little bit thrown off right now. Set shop to game shops plug. Okay, here in REST it happens. That like with the roads before, we select a random entry from the array of game shops and then remove it from said array, or it's probably a linked list, I'm assuming. Okay, so now the shop is one of those shops and it gets removed. So now with this shop variable here in the stop or in the shop, man, this is not well named. Stop and shop sound very similar. Okay, now that my shop has a name, it's here this tank stop shop. Quite the tongue twister. Again, the inventory, and it's just here this good old HTML table, and it prints out the stock of the coffee in the shop, the price. And here, once something ran out of stock, of course, we have to respect that. So if the coffee stock is greater than 0 and our resources are greater than or probably equal, I think, what it costs, the price for one coffee, then we make a button. This all relates to the button. And as you've probably figured out by yourself, the button works like this. You say button, then what it displays, where it links to. But now this is interesting, it links back to itself, it links back to shop. So once you click the button, it reloads the page, but first it executes whatever is here before we're closing this button here. So this means that I'm going to set the resources of money. Of course, I'm going to subtract the price for coffee. I'm increasing now our stock of coffee, and I'm decreasing the shop's stock for coffee all by 1. And if now the shop has a coffee stock of less than 0, well, then the stock is set at 0. And then we reload the page, and once we do this, as you can see here, bam, we got one more coffee, and of course here the stock changed. But this already counts as a turn in terms of the game, and it's a bit annoying because it fades out and in. Else. If, this is the if. I don't have here an else condition, so I might as well just delete this. And the same thing here for gasoline. So those are just here rows in this table here. And once we're done, we go to progression. And again, progression tells us if the shop is done, we go to prepare. And we haven't looked at prepare yet because the game started straight at the map screen. And prepare means, should we have some coffee or not? So here, prepare means if the player fatigue is greater than 0, the game will ask us or tell us you might want to have some coffee. So again here, since I'm using the no break tag, where are we? Prepare there. This no break tag here, it's okay for me just to have line breaks because I know that they will not translate here, and this is just inline here, which is great. Again, it displays our inventory and the status, and now For the effect, it's the effect text, and this means this is currently empty, because if I have one coffee now, this is the effect that's printed out here. So the text, the effect text is now set to an empty string, and the C, $C, whatever is this, is set to 0. Oh, of course, it's just also a temporal temp variable that just prints out how much the coffee worked for us. So if you have more than one coffee, you might want to drink it, of course. If our resources of coffee are greater than 0, well, then we have a button that we can drink. Otherwise, we can just have this continue button. So of course, if we have a continue, if we have one coffee, it reloads this page, but first it does the following. Of course, it reduces our resources for coffee by 1. And now this one here, this is the random value of the coffee yield min or the coffee yield max. Somewhere between there is the effect of the coffee, and our fatigue, of course, is our fatigue minus the effect of the coffee, which is good. And if our fatigue is less than 0, well, our fatigue is 0. We just clamp it there. And then we set the effect text, the coffee restored, print C fatigue. And once we reload, of course, this page, then this variable there of effect text here is being set, or is already set from last time. And once we've printed this out here for having one coffee, then the effect text is empty again. So you have to see this here as a cycle. And this is how or why I did things. It's not very straightforward, I'm afraid, but yeah, this is how things work. Okay, we're almost through. Now the important or interesting thing there with the unicorn incident is, if you want to sacrifice something, the unicorn. And this is how this passage looks here. And we set the status of unicorn incidence by -1 and the stats of incidence +1. Yeah, I don't quite understand what I did here. I mean, I don't know what exactly it does, but I recall from programming, it was always the number of unicorn encounters was always wrong. And it might probably be due to the effect that, like I said, when I'm reloading the page after pushing a button, it counts again as a turn, and it also counts that I've visited this page before. And I think something on these lines was happening also there with the progression and switching back and forth to unicorn. Something there was messing up the number of unicorn incidents. And this is why I just clawed at the problem by sticking some stuff like this in here. Okay, so the unicorn appears in your headlights, as you can see, if you haven't figured it out already. If you want to just have some text on screen in Sugarcube, you just write some text without any tags. So anything that I write here will get rendered in plain HTML. Okay, so the unicorn asks kindly for a sacrifice. The unicorn kindly asks, damn it, for a sacrifice. So if our resources of coffee are less than 0, well, but you have nothing to give, so it vanishes again. And we have here a timed button that just reads said. And after 2 seconds, this button appears, and once we click it, it goes to return passage, and that's that. But if we have more than 0 coffee, well, it asks us how much coffee will we spare. You have print coffee. Okay, then we have a text box here, and I'm trying now to get this here on screen so that we might have the unicorn encounters. So I will cut the video here short until I have a unicorn encounter. There we are. Didn't take as long as anticipated. Finally. Okay, so this is how this looks like. Now we have here this, you have one, and then it renders a text box. And if you compare now here what I have here in version 1.0 with 1.02, it's that we have here a text box, and here we just have buttons that go up and down. So let's see how I handle this text box here in this version. So the text box just reads how many resources you have, because the unicorn by default wants all of your coffee. And then you can say confirm, and we set a temp value of S to sacrifice coffee to whatever is in there. So, and the next thing here is just cleaning up or parsing. So here, if it equals 0, equals also means that it can be an empty string or undefined. I don't think if it's undefined, but you can also here have an empty string. So if you set 0, the unicorn leaves without anything. And if you try and game the system by entering minus something, testers always love to do this. Well, I have a reply for this. It says, "You cheeky bastard," the unicorn grins and leaves empty-hooved. Of course, this is something that you won't see in this version again. And if you input anything that's not a number, if you can see here, this is a regular expression, then the unicorn finds your lack of numerals disturbing and leaves without anything. I thought this would be quite funny. So if none of those cases applies, then it must be a number. Then we check if we have that many coffee, and if we don't have that many coffee, well, it takes all the coffee there are. And then, of course, we set our resources to coffee to 0, or else if we have anything that's not all the coffee in the world, but not 0, then the unicorn thanks us and leaves, and we subtract the amount of coffee from our inventory. And of course, replace unicorn reply. This was, before since it's timed, you don't see it. This was the unicorn thanks you and leaves. This is just an empty string there that's getting replaced here, this by T, so that T is the unicorn text, what's being displayed. So we're going to replace now here this div box here. This is a div with an ID of unicorn reply, so we can say in this div box reply anything that's in there with T, and T is what we set here depending on what happened, or what the value in the text box was. And after 3 seconds, I think this should be enough to read what was there, we return to whatever was the return passage from before. And this was the unicorn incident in this version. So it's, as you've seen it, it's not it's not rocket science there. But how does this translate to different endings? Well, what is this here? I have an incident itself. Okay, so this is just a leftover. So the reasoning behind this was progression would just detect there was an incident there on the stage, and it would hand you over to incident. Incident would be the control for all those incidents. So incident itself would hand you over to incident unicorn out of guess or something. But in the end, it just progression gets you straight where you need to. Just for a complete's sake, this is what happens if you run out of gas. It just sets a different ending and sets the game over to true, and we head back to progression. If you recall, the first thing progression does is checking if game over is true, and if it is true, we are at game over. So this is what the game over screen looks like in code, just a bunch of text and a hint. And I think I like this very much, that the game gives you hints. And this is also widget, your hint. And where do I have the hint? Widgets, there, make shops, widget, hint. There we go. And those hints are just strings of text. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's just an array there, or a list of 5 different hints, and just one gets displayed, because I thought, the game is not a lot of fun as it is right now. And if you fail and you don't even know why you fail, it might be interesting or helpful to have a hint that at least nudges you into the right direction. Like if you are kind to the unicorn, it might help you get a better ending and stuff like this. Talking about the ending, so once we've arrived at the stage end and we have 0 kilometers to go, well, then we head over to victory. Victory looks like, congratulations, you've made it. Now it's time for you to be sacrificed. This was there a little bit on the nose. Then I think in the other versions I left this out, because of course this was the whole twist at the end, that you are the sacrifice. So you just keep descending, and we're here. It's just another passage of text. The only thing that happens here is that I'm manually breaking the lines. So very straightforward, and here it hurts. And this is where the different endings get selected depending on how many sacrifices we made to the unicorn. And this is, spoiler alert, if we made greater than or equal to 8 sacrifices, we get the best ending and this text. It looks at you at the moment, blah, 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 blah. If the sacrifices is less than 8, we set the ending to 2. And if the set ending else, set ending to 3. So if it's greater or equal than 8, but less than 8, the ending is 2. But so yeah, I don't think I did things correctly here, because it's always less than 8. So I don't know why there are 2 different endings. But let's have a look at it. So set ending to 2 if it's not 8 or less than 8. It looks at you with a hint of sorrow in his eye. So this is the medium ending, where the unicorn still helps you a little bit, but it's not, you realize that you could have treated it better, the unicorn. This is the ending 3, that once you have never gave anything, sacrificed anything to the unicorn. But again, I don't think this is firing if is less than 8. Yeah, but also 0 is less than 8. So apparently, yeah, this one would never fire. Shame on me. Okay, and then print T, which means it's just printing whatever got selected here and assigned to this temp variable. And then it's the end. The end. Thank you. Thank you very much. Looks like this. Again, it's just a bunch of statistics. And this was the code review of the gem version of the Sacrificial Trail. And if you want to stick around a little, I won't be going into much of the detail, but if you want to have a look at the post-gem version, what's currently in development, well, we will get into this after I have another sip of coffee. So this is the Sacrificial Trail dev version, and as you can see, it looks a little bit different. If we compare it here, we have this progression thing here, which strings this all together, and here we have nothing. This is because I realized that when I was going through this progression control, it worked for the gem version, but yeah, it counted also always as a turn, even if you didn't see it. And yeah, there were some bugs in there, or just some things that made things much harder in the end. Okay, I'm scrolling here down to see if there are any passages that are missing. Oh, no. Okay, everything is here. So again, it looks similar. This is the starting, the intro, and here we have prepare, map, stage, the incident with the unicorn, the stage ending, and the shop. And I'm also currently, you can also repair your car at the shop, because I tried implementing some kind of health system, or at least a damage system for the car. And of course, we have here victory. And what is also interesting, that we have some kind of score keeping, which has a tallying up of scores. So if you want to see this post-gem version that's being developed, this is also, you can also see this in my Let's Play on the Phil Motion video channel. Okay, let's see just what things are a little bit different here. One thing is, now here there is audio. And audio works like this in Sugarcube. Just to give you a short primer on audio. No, this was wrong here. In StoryInit, yeah, this looks a little bit different now. Yeah, 200 lines here for the initialization. What the hell is this? Okay, so again, here I just renamed some variables here, res for resources, because I didn't want to type resources out all the time, because I used it a lot. I also have here an enum, because this doesn't have enums. So I made one myself. And you have the unicorn consumption, and you can see here the unicorn, since it's being a data structure, an object by itself, yeah, this is a little bit more involved. So of course we have the appearances, and it says mood, and good mood and bad mood is here a value between mood is 0 and it goes up to 8 and down to -8. As you've seen before, the favor of the unicorn it just depends on how many coffees you sacrifice to the unicorn, which is not really helpful, because when you're rolling with coffee and you just give the unicorn its 8 coffees that it wants, it will always think you're a very generous person. But this one here works differently, which we'll get to in a bit. Okay, consumption stats, it's just here for scoring that I'm going to set here the multi times gas and coffee. This is just used for scoring to multiply, for example, how many coffee you have by 14, which is the score you get for the coffee you still have left. Okay, so we're initializing things here. As you can see, the code is much cleaner there. But the big interesting thing is here audio. Audio works with caching audio and audio groups in Sugarcube. Again, there is this whole big thing there. Where is it? In the reference here for audio macros. If you're interested in this, you can read it up here. But in simple terms, you just cache the audio, which means you just load it from a web address. Here is all the score music, and you create an audio group because you can work with different groups you name yourself. So I'm having here now music that's being played constantly, or just the score essentially. I'm just applying here which track is part of which group. Then I have some cues for the unicorn appears and it doesn't appear, and it leaves again. So all those have different cues. And then, of course, I have button sounds, which is in the audio group UI. So I'm just reading a bunch of MP3s and OGG files, caching them and putting them into groups. And there, in the end, I can set different volumes for different groups. This is why it's helpful to group audios in audio groups, that you can just say, I want everything from the score to have a volume of this, or I want all cues to stop now, and things like this. Of course, there are limits to audio, as always in browsers. You can't quite stack up audio, or overall it's you can even fade in and fade out, but it's in my terms it's still a little bit lacking. So you can't have. So you need always to stop a sound of a certain audio group before playing the next one, or otherwise it will stop something else, or something along those lines. It wasn't very intuitive. Okay, so the make roads is pretty much the same thing as we've seen in the other version here. Oh, look, now here the number of roads is set to 50, just to be sure. And same thing with the stops. What's different here now with the stops, of course, is that I didn't change here now the names, but first it decides whether it even if a stop has a shop or has a repair garage, this is set here, and also the price of the repair, the quality, and the speediness. So just wanted to add this, and it's already like we say, a rat's tail in German, which means you just want to add one little thing and it just keeps on going, and there are so many things you have to add. Because first you thought, repairing would be nice, but then of course it has a price, a quality, a speed, and everything has to have interactions, and so on and so forth. So again, we're adding this to the array, and of course we are defining, after adding this to the array, we want to define the chances if a stop has a shop or if the stop has a repair shop connected. This is pretty much what happens here, the only difference. Okay, so in the map screen, it looks a little bit different here. Let's just compare it here. There is sound, and now there's also a background image here, and also on this here with some nice road that's going on. I just did this so that it looks nice there on my phone when I was playing it. And also, the shops look a little bit nicer in terms of the layout, and now you can click here without having to reload the whole page and stuff like this. So again, this is what happens here in the map. The first thing is that I add a class to the body that is map, that is just that I can apply some style sheets as you've seen it, so that once the class is of map, then it has this map background. But apart from this all, there's still those horrible radio buttons in there, and everything with the map screen is pretty much the same. As for the stage itself, if we just glance over it, also just counting up here. And again, still not having fixed this fatigue multi here, so it doesn't matter how fast, slow, or steady you go, you always fatigue at the same rate. Still in there. Christ. Okay, again, here are some debugging stuff and anything else that should happen. And the incidences now, what is more interesting is, of course, that you have here now some audio cue that boom, when you fail there, you ran out of time, or you're overly fatigued or something, that it stops all the music. It says here, music stop any loop, and it also stops all sounds in the UI group. This colon here means this refers to the group, and this one here refers to a certain track. And so it just stops any UI sounds that might be playing. It stops the whole background loop, and then it plays the travel fail cue. Okay, but I said the most interesting part is now how the unicorn gets handled. And this is what happens here. And this is by far, I think, the longest. No, it's not. I think it's not as long as the story initialization. But let's put it this: the most interesting thing happens here. So we also have here a unicorn appearance, which we count up. We count up the incidents, and of course the next passage will be the return passage. I'm still using return passage, but I'm always referring to go to next passage that I know where to go next. And this is also what happens here with the repair. We go to the next passage, and the next passage gets set depending on where we come from. Just that I can keep out this, if you recall, this progression passage here, that I can keep it out of the loop. Okay, so here we want to give the unicorn some coffee. As you've seen it before, it was a little bit different now that you have plus and minus buttons, and this is what happens here. This is just the -1 button and the +1 button, and of course it just changes the amount and clamps it between what you got and the unicorn reply. And here is now the unicorn is defined by mood. What does this mean? Okay, so here we go. The mood multi is set to minus the resources of coffee divided by 2. Okay, and the mood delta is how often has the unicorn been rejected so far times the mood multi plus the mood multi. I don't know from today's perspective, I don't know how or why those formulas work, but it's just the gist of it is that the unicorn just doesn't look simply at the amount of how much coffee you give it, but it also looks at how much coffee does the player still have. Is the player giving their last coffee to the unicorn, but the player would still very much need it because it is because they're very fatigued right now. All this counts in to how benevolent the unicorn is towards you. So here is the player coffee count. I'm just setting up here. Like I said, underscore means temporal variable, just local variable, just to this passage here. So if this fatigue of the player and the amount of coffee and so on. So here we go. Affect the unicorn's mood depending on how much the player sacrifices. What fraction of the player's possession did they sacrifice? Okay, between 0 and 1. Is also, I'm clamping this between 1 and 0 just for for computation's sake, that it's easier for me that I always know that it's a value between 1 and 0. And how many times could the player fully restore with the coffee they have? This is also important because if you can fully restore with what you have anyway and just give the unicorn some, well, it's not as much of a sacrifice that you're making than if you couldn't even restore fully to yourself, but you're still giving away the unicorn. So here, if less than 1, the player has not enough coffee to fully restore, equals 1, player has exactly enough coffee to fully restore, greater than 1, the player can more than fully restore. This also depends, of course, on the average yield of a coffee can, and so on. So this is very, very simple arithmetics, but yeah, I think you get what I'm getting at. So the magic formula that determines the mood of the unicorn. Why, how, what for, I don't know, but the mood delta is, I think mood also works like an assignment like this, but I digress. So this ratio times 8 plus the player's generosity times 4 divided by 2 minus 2 plus the amount divided by 3. Yeah. I don't know. This is the magic formula. This is game development, ladies and gentlemen, and unicorns. This is game development. You don't know what you did there, but it works, so you keep it. So of course the unicorns changes its mood depending on this mood delta, and we're rounding it to the nearest 2 decimal places because why not? And then we're just replacing the empty string with what the unicorn says here. And that's it. And in the end, of course, we have here a score. Might look at this as well, which is just, let's scroll up here. It's making a new table here. Or you know what? It's easier for us. I will just fail here now. Good. decline, terrible, let's go slow, because the longer we spend, the higher our fatigue levels will build up. So, oh, now look at this. Now we are here at the unicorn. Didn't expect for this, but I will spare now all my coffee for the unicorn, and then we will see how the unicorn is towards us, because we have 55 fatigue, but we gave all our coffee to the unicorn, so it should be really on our side. So bad, good, incline, 19 kilometers inclination. If we go slow, it takes us 60 minutes. Yeah, 22 additional fatigue. Okay, we're at 77 now. I don't want to visit the shop, and let's incline. 43 kilometers incline. If I go slow, I will run out of fatigue, or maybe even of time. Bam, you're overly fatigued and you ran out of gas along the way. So you notice that you're out of gas, the car rolls to a stop. Stranded in the middle of the night, unfamiliar environment, there's not much you can do but wait. As the calamity reaches you 76 minutes later, you're not surprised. So game over, and now we are here having this hint. Let's have a look at the statistics, because the statistics are this page here. So this is how it works. Each row fades in, or in this case, it doesn't fade in. It just, there's always a sound cue. And we made 4 sacrifices. And the more statistics is much more for debugging. See here, the unicorn mood is 2.37. So like we've seen, it's between -8 and +8. So we're, it's on the benevolent side towards us. So yeah, this is how the score looks like. And we're just here calculating the score and the time. Of course, we're rounding it again. We're always rounding it. And the final score, just adding up all those values here. Those plus is not necessary, I think. Always finding things in your code that don't look good. Okay, so on here we have next audio. Stop any UI sound that is playing. Play the UI sound. Boom, treble stat. Replace the row, this one here, with the following row here. So it's like an empty table that just gets consecutively replaced, each row one after the other, with, of course, the score values as you've seen. So time remaining, we're rounding this up again. And of course, the score tally. This always is a class so that I can format it nicely with CSS and do this for all the rows here. And of course, here in the end, we have the more statistics, which just puts out how many turns we have, there's consumption, and so on and so on. And this is the end of timed. Timed, as I've mentioned before, is just that the things fade in and out. So yeah, thank you for playing. And also thank you for watching this lengthy code review. I think we're clocking in almost, recording now, I'm over 1 hour, so I'm sorry if this took a little bit too long of your day away. But I think it might be interesting to see how things work out with Twine and Sugarcube. As you might know, Twine has different formats for the stories, and you can set here the story format. Where was it? Change story format here. And this one here was done with Sugarcube 2.21.0, so the latest Sugarcube version. And this is how you access the documentation. Or you just Google Sugarcube 2 reference and you arrive at this one here. And this is how I piece together what works and what doesn't. So if you have any questions regarding this or comments, please feel free to use this YouTube commenting form. And that's it here from a code review perspective. And that is pretty much it, all there is to what I made for Ludum Dare 43. As you can see, Twine is pretty powerful, especially with the Sugarcube 2 format, so if you haven't, I urge you to try it out, even if those kind of interactive text games are not your thing. On the other hand, it always helps to have another tool in your tool belt. Again, thank you very much for watching, and I see you around, I hope. Cheers!